Warning: the episode you are about to listen to most likely contains graphic language, details of violence and murder, and may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hey everybody!
Hi guys!
Welcome to Murder with My Mother, the murder podcast where I talk murder with my mother. Obviously, you guys know we are on episode 14. Holy, thanks for hanging in there.
Can you believe it, Denika?
I can believe 14. It. No, this one I can believe. 14 is actually my favorite number, so.
Good.
Yes.
Well, this year's been a long haul.
Yeah, and it's like 2 months in.
Well, I just mean that we've been dealing with the stupid motherfucking pandemic for a year now.
She was just going off about how she does not even like the word pandemic anymore, so.
Yeah.
She feels it in her soul. I think everybody does, honestly.
Yeah, I feel bad. There's a lot of people that are hanging on by a thread right now. So hopefully our podcast is giving them something to listen to and something to do, even though it's not usually the brightest material. Hopefully it's getting you through and...
Well, something to look forward to, right?
Yeah.
I look forward to recording. I look forward to putting these episodes out because, again, I have no... really hobby I can do right now that I feel safe going in public and doing. So this is just awesome for me. And I've had a few people reach out, which feels super cool, that are like, we love your podcast. Keep it up. Like, can't wait for the next episode. Lots of podcast suggestions. I'm actually thinking of getting us signed up for Patreon. So that would be kind of cool.
That would be super cool. Not that I know really what that entails, but
well,
I just come here and blabber. That's all I know.
Well, I love you.
You're the one
to blabber with you, so.
Yeah, but you're the one that takes care of all the nitty gritty, so thank you very much.
Well, anything for you, my mother.
I'd also like to say a special hello to my mother because I know she's feeling pretty taxed right now. We were supposed to spend Christmas with her, which we were unable to do because of the cocksucking pandemic.
Okay. The descriptive words get better and better every time.
And we haven't seen our family since the summer, so I know she's kind of getting to the end of her rope. So hi, Ma.
Hi, Mugga.
Hopefully it'll be soon. Hold on. Keep going. We love you so much.
Yeah, and that goes for a lot of people who are going through the same thing, right? A lot of people are lonely. A lot of people don't have anyone that they can see because they're somewhere that wouldn't be as far away normally. It feels like extra far because you're not allowed to go anywhere, which it's good to keep everybody safe. But again, mental health is on the forefront right now. The awareness, everyone just, trying to find something that you like to do or you're looking forward to.
And I think that's because also every single person is experiencing some form of mental health awareness right now because we're all feeling the pinch. People that usually kept themselves busy, being active, doing things, traveling, all of that stuff are now feeling crazier than ever. So.
Well, even for myself, I like to go to the gym to get physical activity because not aesthetically, that's awesome what it does for your body, but what it does for my mental health, just being able to go there, unload and leave everything there kind of thing. Now it's like I don't even feel safe. I'm doing workouts at home, but it's not just even that same feeling behind it. So there's a lot of...
That's one thing, that I didn't think you and I would ever get to that point of like, we can't even go to the gym because that's something we also like to share together. So this has actually been a good replacement for us and time to spend together and a little bit of an outlet for us. So thank you again, everybody, for listening that listens to us. We really appreciate it.
We love all of you.
Some of you more than others.
For today, Mom has done the episode selection, so I'm super excited about this episode. And it is, like I mentioned earlier, episode 14, so I'm super pumped up for this episode.
Yeah, so this episode is also an episode that happened, or an action that happened in our own province. But it was up north, and it was one of Canada's youngest serial killers ever. Not the youngest, but I'm pretty sure the second youngest. So we're talking about the case of the 4 women that were murdered by Cody Legebokoff. That's the wrong way to say it.
Legebokoff. All right.
You have to get the accenting good.
Legebokoff.
Legebokoff.
Legebokoff. Okay, I'm gonna let you take over that.
Legebokoff.
Oh, Legebokoff.
Yes.
See? Boom. Easy.
And he's a fucker, so I don't care if we pronounce his name
Yeah,
properly.
Legebokoff. Yeah, like,
Yeah,
fuck
I mean,
you.
as long as we pronounce the names of his victims properly, then who gives a shit about him?
Well, and again, they're the only people to us that matter in these episodes. Obviously, we have to tell the story of these motherfuckers, but, keeping, like we always say on Murder with My Mother, keeping the victims at the forefront of each episode and just bringing their names up and remembering who they were and giving you guys. That's why we try to find as much info about the victims and try to, obviously some episodes it's harder because some of these horrific killers have had a lot of victims, but even, going back to the Gary Ridgway episode.
When we read all the names
Exactly.
out.
It took us a long time, but I don't give a fuck because that's what the least that they deserve. So.
Exactly. I mean, they met their demise in a terrible way. And so bringing awareness to who they were and hopefully bringing awareness to what happened to them will prevent the same fate from happening to other people. I know it won't prevent it from happening to everyone, but that's definitely our goal for sure.
Exactly. So here we go with episode 14. We hope you guys enjoy listening.
So on November the 27th, 2010, Officer Aaron Keller, who was a rookie on the police force, he was just a new officer 1 year in, and he was stationed in Prince George, BC. He was sat outside where Highway 27 meets up with a bunch of different logging roads. And he saw a truck racing down one of the logging roads, like at a super high rate of speed, driving erratically. And then he just kept an eye on it. He followed it. He was by himself, so he called for backup and pursued the truck. It came onto the highway and he just quietly followed it. Meet up with him for backup, Officer Sidhu. And together they pursued the vehicle and pulled the vehicle over. When they were walking up to the vehicle...
Cops gotta be fucking scared. When they go up to a car and it's like... and you see a cop behind you and you're not even slowing down. Like, woo, you don't give a fuck.
And especially, like, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, coming off a logging road. Yeah. Like, that is... Especially it was nighttime.
Yeah.
So...
No streetlights, no nothing. Like, to give you a little background on Prince George, they call it...
What do they call it?
The armpit of BC.
Oh my god, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like it's
nice. Horrible. We're sorry right now. Just a disclaimer if anyone's from Prince George. I like armpits. Like
I love armpits, but it is like it's up in the middle basically of the like the different terrain. Like it's up north and there's not much up there. Like it's a big city up in the middle of nowhere basically. Yeah. There's a lot of small rural communities like that branch off of it. Mm-hmm. And the famous Highway of Tears, which many, I think 17 or 19 people have been abducted and gone missing from, is like just branched right off of there from Vanderhoof to Prince Rupert. So
yeah, there's big billboards up and down that highway saying like, do not get, like, there's a murderer that works here.
Don't hitchhike, don't get into cars. It's a very famous, world famous strip.
Oh, and anyone that's listening most likely has
heard of it
for sure because it's a true crime. Every couple of years they go, did we solve it? Did we solve it? And they're like, no. And on my opinion, I think it's quite a few people working. It's a trucker highway, right?
Yeah, and there are many Indigenous communities that kind of branch off in the areas, and there are a lot of Indigenous women that don't have a lot of means that have used hitchhiking to get around, and unfortunately they've become most of all of the victims of the Highway of Tears are Indigenous women.
Well, and it's sad because in the Indigenous communities you see that where there's trauma and then there's things that happen in their lives that make them more susceptible to something like this happening because of the whole drug use. If you're experiencing generational trauma from your past generations or going through it, you're going through it, you look to substance, you look to things to like numb that. Yeah. And so that makes you more susceptible to make decisions like to hitchhike or to be a sex worker or some things like that. It leads you to places that are unsafe, and especially in the Indigenous communities. We've talked about this before. Like, there are people that victimize those women just because they know of the systemic racism that happens where they know that they're not going to be investigated. Like
And
if a
that's just
Caucasian
it.
lady went missing, which is fucking horrible. And I hate that to even admit that exists, but it
Same.
fucking does. And
Yeah.
it is horrible.
I
So,
mean, acknowledging it is the first step
yeah, like
to
anything,
fixing
right?
it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is horrible and it's terrible, and you can't even imagine that that still exists, but it's very, very much still in the forefront,
Yeah.
especially of the communities up north where women are going missing and they're being called runaways or high risk lifestyles or
Yeah, which is basically slapping a sticker on them saying you don't fucking matter and we're
exactly.
not going to investigate this and we don't really care where you went. Where it's like this is a human life. There's one race in this planet, the human race. So everyone, the fact that they don't look at that and they look at someone and say, "Oh, that's because she's a drug addict." Like, who
Yeah.
fucking cares? Solve where she went because you have family and friends and all that stuff. And yeah, up there especially, that's happening more and more. So.
So yeah, I mean that was kind of a sidebar. We kind of got off
Oh yeah,
track,
sorry.
but I mean that's just kind of laying some of the background for much of this story actually. So this truck was seen speeding out of the logging road. The two police officers in separate vehicles pulled it over, and when they pulled it over, they were walking up to the truck and they noticed this man's arm, just holding out a license and registration nonchalantly
Which
out
is
the window, which is weird. Like
I never do anything to get pulled over. Full speed, whatever. And when whatever, a couple times. But
see my eye roll there, but
yeah, but do you know what I mean? I'm nervous, and I
yeah.
haven't even really done anything super. I broke the law, but in a way of like, oh fuck, I was going like 20 over the speed limit. Nervous.
Yeah.
Where I'm fidgeting inside my car, and usually I wait till they ask me to get my license and
Well, that was
registration.
the thing they said, is that it was very odd because most people panic and they don't have it ready to go.
No, yeah, exactly.
So when they walked up to the window, they saw a young man. They didn't know how old, but early 20s, they figured.
Obviously young, yeah.
Husky, tall, shaggy-haired young man, and he was wearing a pair of shorts, which it was winter, or it was just about winter in Prince George. So it was like -10 or below.
Everybody knows a guy like that, though.
Yeah.
The guy that always wears shorts no matter what
Yes.
the weather is. Cody
So,
Legebokoff.
so Cody Legebokoff was the name on the driver's license. And as the police were looking, they noticed a couple things. So they noticed that he had a smudge of blood on his chin, like right by where his beard is.
Mm-hmm.
And they also could see some other things kind of strewn around inside the truck. But the most important thing they noticed was that there was an open container of liquor in the truck. So that automatically, boom,
boom, bitch,
gives you the right to search the vehicle.
Yeah.
So they asked him to please step out of the vehicle, and they very politely said, it's really cold in here, or out here, so I think you should probably maybe take a seat while we search your vehicle in one of the cruisers.
Mm-hmm.
So before they put him in the cruiser, they searched his pockets, and in his pockets they found a cell phone, and they found a Leatherman tool, which is like a pocket knife, but it has like a bunch of different tools on it.
Okay.
And it was covered in blood.
Oh my god, you did put your phone on silent.
I did.
She's like, right before the episode, I put my phone on silent. Is your phone on silent? I'm like, yeah, it is. And she goes, I learned. Bitch, you did not learn nothing.
Well,
Anyway.
I learned now. So
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, they found this Leatherman
tool that was covered in blood. Yeah. Which, Kate.
And
Suspicious.
they said, like, what's all over this knife? And he said, oh, I killed a grouse, which is a wild game, so a bird.
Mm-hmm.
And they both police looked at him and said, there's a little too much blood here for having killed a grouse.
And why? Like, that's suspicious.
It's 9:30 at night at this point also, I forgot to mention. So,
Yeah.
like, you're out at night, just driving around in your shorts.
It's
with
extra
open
dark out there,
alcohol.
like we mentioned, because there's no street lights. It's a logging road. You're
Yeah.
out there. It's dark as shit. There's like
And
the moonlight. It's the light you have.
It actually it's a snowy place too, so
Mhm.
that's all there was. Like, the only light they were getting was
It always
from their
looks darker
flashlights.
when it's snowing, like it
Yeah.
always looks darker when it's winter. So imagine how dark it was out there where you're gonna just hunt a grouse. Like,
Yeah, so his story quickly changed, and he said that he had met a friend and they had poached a deer. So, well, actually, first he said they had found a deer that had been hit, so they stabbed it to put it out of its misery. And then later on, his story changed again to they had killed a deer and just driven its carcass out. Like they didn't gut it or anything. They just killed it. So the police continued to go through Cody's truck and they found a pipe wrench, which was also covered in blood, and all the teeth of the pipe where it turns was all covered in like a lot of blood. The mat underneath his feet was pooling in blood. There was so much blood.
So like he would have stepped in it?
Yes.
Like,
so it was like
on
pooling,
him.
like it was dripping. There was
dripping
blood on his legs. There was crack pipes in the truck.
Okay.
Which he said belonged to his friend, of course.
Okay, yeah, because who says, oh yeah, that's my crack pipe?
Yeah. And when they checked his ID, they discovered that he was only 20 years old also. So this is like a lot of weird stuff for just a random 20-year-old pudgy guy to be cruising around with on a logging road. On further inspection, they found a 4-pack of mudslide.
Oh my god, mudslide.
Coolers, so basically Kahlua and milk, but in a bottle.
I drank those in like the 8th grade.
Oh my god.
Loved but
yeah,
after the 9th grade, right? It was like, these are like chocolate milk, like essentially.
I mean, that's a kid's drink, really. Kids that are trying to drink. And then they also found a little monkey backpack. So it was a backpack, which was basically like a stuffy of a monkey's face. So a child's backpack.
Yeah, right by the mudslides.
So they opened the backpack and there was ID from Children's Hospital, which belonged to a Lauren Leslie, 15 years old. So at this point, they're like, uh-oh, like,
something's not looking good. What's adding up to them is not looking like...
Exactly. Yeah. So Cody was still sticking to his story that they had just killed a deer, poached a deer. He knew it was wrong. He had dumped it up in the logging road where he was coming from. So the RCMP decided that they would call in the game warden. So they called this guy in that worked for the Fish and Wildlife to come in and check it out. So that guy showed up and he was also talking to Cody and talking to them, and he knew just from looking around that this doesn't make sense. Like no one, first of all, goes and poaches a deer without even having a gun.
No, with a pocket knife?
With a pocket knife and a pipe wrench.
And changes your story 5 times before you even...
Exactly.
Yeah. And has a crack pipe in their pocket.
A lot of crack pipes in the car. Yeah, there were multiple crack pipes. So Cody said, I'm a redneck and that's what we do.
Oh, that was his explanation.
That was his explanation.
Yeah,
very, very well thought out and forward-thinking explanation.
I mean, it is a redneck response, I guess, but at the same time, like, come on, dude.
So they chose to send the Fish and Wildlife officer up to investigate because he was the only one that had a 4x4 truck. So the 2 RCMP officers stayed with Cody while the Fish and Game officer went up to find the supposed deer. And while he was gone looking, the police ran the ID that they had found and saw that there was a girl that had just been reported missing that night called Lauren Leslie, who was 15 years old. So they phoned her dad. That was the number they had.
The mudslides, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, obviously.
They phoned her dad, who knew nothing of it. Her parents were divorced, and
but they were like nicely, like they were cordial, and they co-parented pretty well. That's what I read.
Yeah. So they phoned her dad, and he didn't know anything about it. And right at that same time, the game warden had gone up and followed the tracks. And the snow was starting to fall again, so the tracks were actually being covered. Like, it was perfect timing that they found Cody doing what he was doing. Like,
yeah, because the snow, especially in Prince George,
just wiped it right out.
It could snow for like 20 minutes and be like a foot, you know? Like,
probably
not that much, but still a couple inches to cover at least. Yeah.
So when the officer approached the tracks, he could see 2 sets of footprints. Tire tracks, and then 2 sets of footprints leading off to the side. And then he saw drag marks and blood. So once he kept following the drag marks and the blood, he saw a small blonde female covered in blood laying face down in the snow with her pants pulled around her ankles and her head completely bashed in.
What a fucker.
Which explains the pipe wrench. So that's a lot to handle. That's terrible. I can't imagine coming upon that
Especially, it's not even
at
the
this
police
time.
that, okay, maybe they've had more exposure to situations like this. It's the game officer
Yeah.
who probably, okay, yeah, I'm sure he's seen dead animals, but that's not the same as finding a young girl who is bludgeoned to death in her face, too. Like,
And I think at that also, like, that's another thing about such a rural community. You're not subjected to like that much murder and stuff either. There's some, of course, it's a big city, but not like what they've discovered on
no.
that day.
And again, not even the police. If the police had spotted, like, seen that, it's still messed up, something to find. But the game officer, like,
Yeah.
damn.
Lauren Leslie was 15 years old and she lived in the town of Vanderhoof, which is about 2 hours from Prince George. By all accounts, she was a super kind, caring, loving little girl, really.
Innocent, yeah. She was
Innocent.
only 15.
And she was always very concerned with people all being treated equally, and she stuck up for the underdog. And another thing about her is she had a visual disability, so that's why she had the card from Children's Hospital. She could only had 50% of vision in one eye, and her other eye was completely non-seeing. So she had.
That's probably why she advocated for equality and everybody to
Yeah.
be. And also, that makes sense too, because she was quite innocent. I mean, you see things throughout this story that she's just a naive young little girl.
Yeah, I
And
mean, at 15, you have to think, like, especially growing up in a small community. Her
well,
dad said she loved swimming and fishing and.
well, and when you have a child with any sort of thing that's a medical concern, you keep that child closer than you would keep another child that, let's say, didn't have a medical concern. If you have a child that's blind in one of her eyes and can only see 50%, I'm sure you're not allowing her out to go and, do the same things like, let's say, I was doing at like 13, 14, 15, right? She probably just is venturing into that.
Yeah, she was definitely innocent. So when Lauren's dad called her mom to find out what the deal was, like why was she
Why is her
missing?
Yeah, why is her backpack in some rando's car?
Yeah, they didn't even tell him that actually. They just
They said they had
asked
his
the
ID,
question,
right?
had her ID.
Yeah.
So her mom said that around 8 p.m. that night, Lauren had said she was going to meet a friend for coffee. And then she was supposed to go stay at her dad's later, and she had a curfew of 1 o'clock. So
It wasn't even curfew time yet. So
this was around 11 o'clock,
Mhm.
but no one had heard from her. Her dad hadn't heard from her, so she was reported missing. Yeah, like no one thought she'd be out in the snow or out with this boy.
Well, and who, again, in every episode, I always say, because who thinks that this is what's happening? And the same with this, it's that shock factor, because in such a small town, especially, you do not think something like that is happening.
Yeah, in Vanderhoof, you would never imagine.
No.
This was around 11 o'clock at night. The game warden messaged the police and told them what he had found and made his way back to the scene. At the same time, Lauren's dad was calling around. He was calling the police, and he decided just to show up to the scene.
That's the worst.
Yeah, it wasn't hard to find out, like where there was police gathered. And he showed up and asked what was going on, and someone told him, all I know is that we're dealing with a homicide.
Oh.
So he right away figured it out.
See it happen all the time where relatives show up or that person shows up. And I think as a relative or as a close friend or family member, you have that pit in your stomach where oh no.
I mean, a lot of people say they just know.
Yeah, and that's like,
oh, it gives me like such a heavy feeling just thinking about that
so
in my
sad.
stomach. Such a little cute little girl, like terrible. So around 1 a.m., they took Cody to the police station and charged him with homicide and questioned him. And he, of course, was still denying everything.
The best is I read that he said, I didn't kill that girl. It's like, well, then how'd you know if it was just a deer that you left in the woods? You fucking dumbass.
So once they found her, it was pieced together that she had been talking to him on the website Nexopia.
Ooh, Nexopia, that brings back.
Denika had some years on Nexopia.
Reminisce, ** TNA ***.
Yeah.
Back in full effect.
So she had been talking to him for a couple of weeks. She had told him she was 15. He started out every conversation that they would have with sexual innuendos, and her response was always to deflect it and just like, she was probably excited that she was talking to an older boy,
Of
and
course,
she would
yeah.
just be like asking cute little normal questions. And
Well, and that predatory factor, again, we've discussed this, that predatory factor when you're a 15-year-old girl and a 20-year-old is paying attention to you, like,
yeah.
oh my God, you don't realize until, okay, hindsight, like 10 years later, where you're like, that's fucking creepy.
So even when they found the transmissions from that night, he had asked her, like, oh, come and meet me. And so she agreed to meet him at her school. And he asked her, like, I'm going to pick up some drinks for us. Like, what would you like? And she didn't probably know anything else to say but mudslides.
And mudslides again, because that's like the thing that's in
like
chocolate milk. Yeah, it's so sad.
And she said in that last message, it's not about anything sexual anyway. We're just hanging out, right? And he didn't answer.
Because he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, so the last time that Lauren was seen was sitting on the swings at her school, being as a black GMC Sierra pulled up, and a man with shorts got out. And
okay, the shorts though, like again, like for real, everyone knows a guy that wears shorts all year
I work
round.
with several of those guys and girls. So then once they got him to the police station and they questioned him basically all night long, he finally is when he said, I didn't kill that girl.
Yeah.
I just saw some tracks and I followed them and I went and saw her and she was already dead. And so I moved her body. Because I was scared. I just needed to get out of there because I didn't want anyone to think I did it.
But you wouldn't think that if that did happen and you did people stumble across dead bodies all the time. And if that did happen when you're speeding out of the logging road, you probably would have mentioned that first instead of being like cool as a fucking cucumber, having your driver's license just dangling out the fucking window. Like, are you serious?
So they had him, like I said, they're questioning him. He asked if he could please call his parents because he was getting really scared, and they were like, no, buddy, you're 20, you're an adult. The only person you can call right now is a lawyer. And he didn't know any lawyer, and they'd read him his rights, so they just kept questioning him. And
he kept trying to talk to them, right? And they kind of said to him, you should call your lawyer? Like,
yeah, before, when they first got him there, he just kept talking, and they basically read him his rights and started listening. And his stories changed multiple times. Finally, he admitted that, okay, he had met Lauren on Nexopia, they'd had sex in his truck, and then she wanted to go 4x4ing. So he took them down this road to go 4x4ing, and all of a sudden, she just started out of nowhere, hitting herself in the head with the pipe wrench and saying, I hate my fucking life. And then she stabbed herself in the neck with the knife.
Because that's really believable.
So it turned out that Cody had a serious girlfriend of like 3 months.
Oh,
that he met at his job. Her name was Amy Vole, and they worked at the Ford dealership together. And he started crying and saying, like, no, I would never do that. I have a girlfriend. I can't believe I cheated on my girlfriend. She can't ever find out. So the police he still wasn't admitting to what he had done. So the police decided to bring Amy in.
Well, they could obviously see that was like a soft spot for him.
Definitely, because he was worried, like he was sweating it big time that his girlfriend was going to find out that he had sex with someone.
Oh, but didn't murder them and bludgeon them to death and then leave them in a...
So that was by day 2, they brought in Amy. And by all accounts, she was a petite little 5-foot girl that he was 6'1" and 200 and something pounds. So she looked very small next to him. So the first thing he blurted out as soon as his girlfriend walked in, well, she first of all went over and gave him like this big, long, lingering hug. Like, ugh.
Ew.
And then he just said to her, I didn't kill anyone. And she was like, yeah, well, I don't think you did kill anyone.
And in the 3 months I've known you in this big embrace.
So the police said, the constable that was questioning him said, I think that Amy deserves to know the truth.
I love when they do that.
And Cody just looked and he was like, yeah, I agree, she does. And then he repeated the story that he had met up with Lauren had sex with her in his car, and then he called it ape shit, and basically beat herself to death and stabbed herself. What he didn't anticipate was Amy was super fucking pissed off because he cheated on her.
Yeah.
So, like, even the murder part, he didn't even get to that yet. His girlfriend was mad. Like,
of course, because
she's a 20-year-old girl.
And you're being called into the police station because your boyfriend...
For 2 days, yeah. Your boyfriend's been in there for 2 days.
Because he murdered someone. Let alone, he also slept with them. Against their will, obviously, but... There
was a lot of stuff that they decided to call him on while Amy was there because they knew that she was his... Weakness.
His kryptonite.
Yeah, so they said to him, well, it doesn't really make sense that if she just killed herself and walked towards there, first of all, and her pants are pulled down. Like, why are her pants pulled down?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, her pants got pulled down when I was dragging her after. He's like, okay, I did hit her a couple times with the pipe wrench. I just wanted to make sure that she was out of her misery.
Which is what he said about the deer,
yes.
Which he was obviously projecting about that. He really felt the same, probably. Like, oh, she put her out of her fucking misery. Like,
well, I mean, he didn't even. He started her whole misery.
I know, but you know what I mean? Like
So then he also was faced with the fact, like, if he had drug her to get her out of the way, they said she would have had snow on the inside of her underwear and the inside of her pants, and there was nothing.
And you have to think the pants on the other side would probably be so dirty and folded over because if he's dragging her to just help her to get out of the way because he just found her here on this logging road dead, then
exactly.
Fuck, obviously that's the thing about look at the crime scene. That kind of stuff yells at them because they've seen that before. It's just when someone tries to lie.
Well, his lies were just stupid anyway. I mean, he's a 20-year-old kid. So his lies are stupid, and I mean, at this point, his girlfriend's gonna leave. She says, I believe you that you didn't kill someone, but I really don't want to have anything to do with you anymore because you cheated on me.
Yeah.
And then she hugged him again and left.
Again, though, being 20 years old, I mean, I don't think if she really doesn't think he's done any of this stuff, but obviously she's mad at him. Like, he's in a hard situation.
That took the forefront with her. Like, that's how selfish some people are too, right? Like, the love of your life just cheated on me. Never mind that he killed a 15-year-old girl. And he's admitted to, like, just putting her out of her misery. Anyway, they had enough to charge him, obviously, because the evidence spoke volumes. And while he was sitting there was another sergeant, Sergeant Peter Tuffick, who immediately put 2 and 2 together and thought,
this MO looks familiar.
This MO looks exactly like the dead sex worker that we found in Elsie Gun Park in Prince George.
Like 2 months before that,
yeah,
right?
So it was around 8 weeks before. They found Cynthia Ma's very badly decomposing body in the bushes at Elsie Gun Park, which is about an hour from Vanderhoof in Prince George. And they were just kind of looking around because that park is known for people using substances, taking sex workers there. Mm-hmm. And some police were just doing a random scour of that park and they smelled something really bad and they found the decomposing body of Cynthia Ma. And she had been reported missing a couple weeks before. And by the time they found her, she had been there for a couple weeks. And she had the same bashed in head and the same pants around her ankles, and it was starting to look very familiar to them.
If you're in law enforcement and in a small town and that happens and it's the exact same, again, MO, then that would be pretty apparent.
Cynthia Ma was a 35-year-old Indigenous woman. She had had struggles in her life with cocaine abuse, and she was using sex work to fund her addiction. Again,
trying to, supplement that therapy for trauma and things you've been through in your life and things you've been...
Systemically?
No, systemically, yeah, but also the things that you've been subjected to. There we go. Yeah, like you're subjected to things that you need to numb that and dull that, and then it leads you down these roads. And she was found in a park decomposing, and it's like
very badly decomposing.
Yeah, and it's like nobody...
There was actually more victims as they went along, and they all kept in touch with their kids, their families. So they were all reported missing. So Cody was arrested for Lauren's murder. And in the 2 years leading up to him going to trial, they did extensive searches on his apartment.
Yeah, because this is screaming like, okay, if this guy's done this 2 times and it's so, we say, you don't just do this once or twice. Once you do that, there's got to be more. So obviously they started, like you said, testing all his clothes, using forensics, using different testing techniques. And yeah, they got him on what?
So there was Cynthia, who was found a few weeks after September. And there was another woman, Jill Dashenko, and she was 35 also. She was reported missing in October and found they figured about 4 days later at a gravel pit. And
good thing they collected DNA off of all these
people.
So
they had DNA on Jill, inside of Jill, and she was also she had, I believe, 6 kids, and she always kept in touch with her family also. So she was reported missing and found quite quickly at a gravel pit. And on both Cynthia and Jill, even though Cynthia was quite decomposed, they could find a lot of defensive wounds on their arms and stuff, that they had put up a really good fight to whoever.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. That's what helps solve your case after. I mean, not to sound morbid or anything, but if I was ever attacked and I feared for my life, I would make sure I scratched the fuck out of that person, because they go, that's part of what they do for trace DNA or trace evidence. They scrape under victims' nails, because a lot of the time the killer is leaving behind DNA that they don't know that they're leaving behind, whether it be they accidentally nicked themselves when they're stabbing, or if they get a nosebleed, or you've heard about things like that where they test the evidence that found at the crime scene, and that's usually what leads them back to the killer.
Well, and Jill was actually found in 2009, so the year before. So that would have made Cody only 19 years old at the time.
That was probably his first victim.
Yeah, that's what they figured, that Jill was his first victim. And then later he was obviously ramping up, because Cynthia was in September. And then there was another woman reported missing also in September. Her name was Natasha Montgomery, and she was 23 years old. Also a woman of Indigenous heritage. She was from the nearby town of Quesnel, and she was a sex worker and had struggles with addiction also. So while they were going through Cody's apartment, which the crazy thing is, Cody lived with 3 women as roommates.
These women were clearly never home, or...
Well, they had previously lived in a house, a big house where Cody had the basement suite and they had the upstairs, and they were having parties all the time and stuff. So I could kind of see probably when Jill went missing was probably at the house, he was still living at the house. But
I read too that he, surprisingly, everyone that knew him was he was fun, he was good at sports, he was a people's person, he was a man's man, he was popular and got along with everybody, and
he had none of the McDonald triad. He hadn't done anything.
He probably secretly did, fucking weirdos, and they know it's weird, so they hide it.
He disguised it better, I guess.
Well, he killed a grouse.
So in his apartment, they found several, so much evidence that it wasn't even funny. They had a couch that had so much blood that someone had bled to death on it.
Oh.
So that was...
and no one noticed it was sitting in the fucking living room?
So there was a bloody handprint right by the front door. His bloody handprint was sitting on the wall by the front door. There was blood all over his bedroom curtains, his bedspread, his carpet. There was blood on his bathroom
washed out,
walls.
Obviously?
No, it was all just showing. There was blood stains on the couch.
No, they had to just use luminol. That had to be
No, I'll tell you in a minute. So... This is how
dumb.
He was so lazy about his cleanup and so stupid.
Freaking came back to bite you.
Obviously were the people that he was hanging out with, because so they got to charge him for 4 counts of first-degree murder. So by the time he went to trial, just before he went to trial, his lawyer, which he finally got a lawyer, made a motion to move the trial to Vancouver because they said it would be too prejudiced to have it in Prince George. And the judge denied the motion, so the trial started 2 years later. It was 4 years after he killed Lauren that the trial started in Prince George. So he showed up looking totally different, like a man, basically.
Yeah, because he probably had grown up and now he'd been institutionalized.
Shaved his head and had a long goatee. And yeah, he looked like
finding yourself in jail. Yeah.
So
he looked like a jail guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. When you think of a jail guy, you think of that. Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm picturing it in my head right now.
Like a TV jail guy.
Yeah, I get it.
So yeah, I mean, they had all this evidence and they called a bunch of witnesses, obviously. One of the witnesses they called was a friend of Natasha Montgomery's who said that she was also a sex worker and she had introduced Cody to Natasha and they had gone and smoked crack and meth and all this kind of stuff with Cody, and she hadn't seen Natasha after she went missing, and she used to hang around with Cody all the time. Like, she slept with him, she would call him when her boyfriend beat her up, like, he was like her buddy. So Cody's girlfriend was called to the stand, Amy, and she said, well, yeah, I saw the blood all over his apartment. Like, I saw the bloody handprint. He told me that he just cut his foot when he was drunk, and he told me he didn't do any hard drugs, and he told me that the blood in his bedroom was from a nosebleed, and like he had excuses for all the blood, but like that's a lot of blood that nobody noticed.
Clean it up.
There's actually evidence photos if you look, and there was pooling blood still underneath the couch. Like, I can't believe, like, that must have smelled bad.
Imagine you're those roommates and this all comes out. Like,
no, like, I get, like, when you're a partying pig and you're like,
yeah.
You know, like, if you really think about, like, your party years.
Yeah, where you're just
like,
disgusting. Yeah.
We're disgusting.
Yeah.
We're hammered every day.
Yeah, but I've been to some party houses, okay, and they were disgusting, okay?
Yeah.
But if there was just fucking blood all over the place,
I know,
that would be like a literal red flag. It's like a bloody red handprint on the wall.
Yeah. Well, and it was right by the front door.
It's literally like saying like, this person
got caught red-handed.
Literally. Holy shit, some people.
So then they put Cody on the stand. He decided he wanted to take the stand.
Never a good idea for them, but always a good idea for us.
Well, he actually got up there thinking he was shit hot and
but that's what always happens.
Yeah. So he got up there and said, well, I'm not going to tell you too many details because it's pretty boring. But when I lived in that first house, that party house, I made friends with some drug dealers, and I'm not going to rat them out because I don't want to go to jail seeming like the ratty type of person. But I'm just going to call them X, Y, and Z. And the judge said, hold on a minute. Who and what are X, Y, and Z? So Cody went on this big, long tangent with each girl that was murdered, saying that these drug dealers, X, Y, and Z, had brought these girls to his parties. And the first one, Jill, he decided that he'd have sex with her because she didn't look that bad.
Nice.
So after he had sex with her, the guys, X, Y, and Z, said she has to die. She owes too much money. And then they bludgeoned her to death right in front of him. And I forgot to mention, they also found a bloody axe, a pickaxe, and a bunch of other weapons with all these girls' blood on it in his closet at his house also. His story was basically the same for all three women, that X, Y, and Z had brought them over to his house, and even when they'd ask him questions on cross-examination, he'd say, I don't know, man, I was really high, like, I just handed him the knife. And so Natasha, the girl that was never found. They never to this day have found Natasha's remains, which is so sad. And his story with Natasha was that X, Y, and Z.
Who the fuck would think that is a believable thing to say on the stand in front of a jury and the judge?
Yeah, so like he said that they dismembered Natasha, but he couldn't remember where her body was placed.
So clearly he dismembered Natasha and didn't want to tell them where their body was. Which at that point, I would just say, what the fuck? Like, just, you're already being charged for this. Why don't you just admit where her body is?
Give the
give the family
peace.
Yeah.
Right after he testified, his lawyers tried to make a plea bargain to bargain him down to plead guilty. He said he would plead guilty to all 4 murders if they were second-degree murder. And the judge just said, no, ain't gonna happen.
Like, look up in the dictionary what first-degree murder says,
Yeah.
and then second.
So after only 1 day of deliberation, Cody was found guilty of 4 cases of first-degree murder and also put on the sex offender registry list because for some reason, that was the one thing he didn't want to happen because he didn't want to be treated as a sex offender by other people in the jail. So
because we know.
Yeah. So the judge made sure that he was put on the sex offender list, and the judge said, your crimes are so heinous, they go next level, and I really don't think you should ever walk among us again.
No, and I'm glad that the judge did because that's fucking creepy. When you're arrested for 4 counts of first-degree murder and everyone that knows you is like, wow, what a surprise. That guy was awesome. That guy was great.
Yeah.
Everybody loved him. Like, those are the
dangerous.
creepy ones.
Yeah.
That's like some Ted Bundy vibes, right?
Yeah.
Where you're so the complete opposite and it's a hidden, weird, like dark thing that you have, That's creepy. So I hope that guy is forever in jail and forever.
Well, he is forever in jail. I mean, at this point, he was born in 1990, so...
Wow.
Yeah, so he is still in jail. He went to Kent jail in Agassiz when he was first convicted. Now he's in jail somewhere in Ontario. And he's doing 4 consecutive life sentences, not eligible until after he serves 100 years. So the saddest part, I think, is although the family of Lauren can take small consolation in the fact that him getting caught killing her prevented him from killing a lot of other women because he was just ramping up. He was 20 years old.
Yeah, and it brought to light all the women that he had murdered that went under the radar, right?
And so when he left after being convicted, when they let him out, there was a big group of Indigenous women with a drum circle, and they were saying a prayer, and it was so beautiful. But Natasha Montgomery's family never, ever found out where her body was. So they've never gotten to bring her home.
So sad.
So that's the saddest part about that. There's not any closure for her family. Not that you get closure when someone is murdered, but just to be able to bring your person home and lay them to rest with dignity and to connect.
In the Indigenous culture, that is so important, right? To have your loved one with you or where it also gives him, I feel like, that
one up.
Yeah, because he's almost doing it on purpose to cause more.
Fucker. He's a fucker. Like, that's all he is.
There you go. Said it best by my mother.
Yeah.
He is a fucker.
He is a fucker.
Sorry for a lot of the swearing in this episode.
Yeah, we had a lot of swearing today, but I'm just going to blame it on the fucking pandemic. And the fact that, I don't know, we're just all pent up and ragey and just, man. And this case just made me so mad because he's such a little MFer.
Yeah, I agree.
Although that was a really sad case to bring you today, and it was, I don't want to give any notoriety to that guy because he was such a young, groundbreaking killer, but it's just terrible.
It's rare. It's rare to see. Most serial killers are usually, I want to say...
They say...
25 to 45 years old.
They say that's what a psychologist, clinical psychologist, forensic psychologist came in and said. Like, this is very rare.
Yeah.
Most serial killers don't have the organizational tactical ability.
Well, it doesn't sound like he did really either.
No, well, he didn't because
he's not the cleaning part behind it.
No, but typical 20-year-old man.
No, but even the fact that because I'm sure, and this is really creepy to think of about it.
Rural communities.
Well, not even any community that somebody's sitting and thinking. It's like those 2 kids, like the ones that from the island that killed those people. It's almost like there's a movie. It's about it has Ryan Gosling in it when he's young. Murder by Numbers, I think. No, something like that. But it's about these 2 kids that want to kill. And imagine how many people there are.
Yeah, there
that
are a lot
are
of
thinking
people.
about I want to murder, but they're just formulating their plan. And luckily, a large percentage of those people never follow through with it. It's creepy enough that they have that thought, but luckily they don't follow through with it. But then you see someone, again, who's so normal on the surface, who, you know what, again, I probably would have thought he was a fucking weirdo because I have that, pick up that energy off people.
But... He looks like one of my cousins. I'm not going to mention which one. But... Yeah, just like a
Because
normal guy.
most of your cousins listen to this podcast, so they're gonna probably put one and two together there. So
Anyway.
just kidding, Stefan. It's not you.
Stop it.
Jake.
We're haywire today.
Yeah.
Pandemic.
Fucking pandemic. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode. Episode 14. Like I said, it's my favorite number. So lucky number 14. That guy was a fucker. So
it was actually really weird too because Denika and I drove up. My son was going to university in Prince George, and Denika and I listened to an episode about this while we were on our way up there. So it was like everything kind of was a little bit more real, you know, like you're looking at all this nature and this wildlife and this terrain of the
just thinking of what went through that cop's head when that car just like,
oh,
you know,
God.
like sped out of nowhere.
Yeah, this one gets my heart beating. Like, it's pretty freaky for sure.
And it's great, again, like we said, that they caught him before he really got the opportunity to ramp up, because it was getting...
He's ramping up quickly.
Yeah, so...
Okay, well, Denika's going to bring us another episode in 2 more weeks, and I look forward to seeing which one she chooses. Feel free to send her an Instagram message.
Yes. DM us, Murder with My Mother Podcast on Instagram, www.murderwithmymotherpodcast.com, or just message me on Facebook. I'm Denika Dotis. Christy Lamb over here.
I'm not saying my name. I don't want to get murdered.
Just kidding. Unhear me.
Yeah. So, yeah, I hope everyone is making it through okay. And you can always just send us a message of, hey, I'm not doing so well, or hey, I need someone to talk to, or hey, what are you guys up to, or whatever, on any of those platforms also, because we're all feeling the burn right now for sure.
And we're all in this together. The thing that keeps us separate is that, you know, everyone thinks they have to go through it alone, but this is the one time in at least probably 100 years that everyone in the globe is going through the same thing at the same time. So there's people right beside you that are going through things that you have no idea about. So that's the thing I love about right now, the vulnerability of everybody being transparent and just owning that everyone's going through some shit. And I think that will help everybody feel a little more normal, that this is normal right now, to feel like, when is it going to be normal?
Take a day off work if you feel like it. Call it sick.
Fuck, take
a mental health day. Not that I do or did yesterday, but just do it.
But until next episode, we hope you guys are staying vigilant, staying safe, washing your hands, wearing your mask.
Not touching your face.
Not traveling, not going anywhere. And yeah, we will talk to you guys in 2 more weeks.
See you later, y'all.
Come back next time to listen to me talk murder with my mother. Bye, guys.
Bye.